Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all feeling on this very early morning? Welcome to the third Southeast Asian Film Financing Conference. My name is Marcus Lim. I'm a filmmaker, correspondent for Variety, and also your host for today. Before we begin, those of you who are here for the Harvey Weinstein Conference, it's next door, Melati Ballroom. You're in the wrong place. Yeah. Oh, Christoph, yeah. Don't forget, Christoph, the dress code is bathrobes only. Okay, so just let you guys know about that. Okay, you guys come. You guys know what's coming today. So it's so lovely to see so many new faces and so many familiar faces in SAFF. The thing is, Southeast Asia is clamoring for stories, television, film, digital stories. We have 650 million people speaking 20 different languages. So how do we monetize this incredible marketplace? And how do we finance a business model that makes sense and that is sustainable? That's something that we hope to explore here today at this conference. So before we begin, some house rules, please. Cell phones, please keep them all on silent. I've been authorized by SAVA to confiscate and destroy all ringing phones. Is that right? Yeah. That being said, if your phone is destroyed, Jin Kai there will give you a brand new iPhone X as a replacement. Oh, we're not doing that? Oh, we're not doing that anymore. No. We have a very tight schedule. So panelists, we love your unique insights. The more focused you are when it comes to your insights, the more time we can pack. The more discussion we can pack into the limited time we have. So moderators, please feel free to send it out to the audience for Q&A, okay, and to cut audience questions short. Audience members, please keep your questions short, to the point, and please remember, no self-promotion. Okay, what do I mean by self-promotion? If, for example, I were to mention that I just written and produced and directed a co-production with Germany and Singapore, 70 Spies Thriller, The Man on the Other Side, www.themanontheotherside.com, we're still looking for sales representation, that would be self-promotion. So none of that, please. Thank you. Okay, I think you guys have had too much of me, right? Okay, our first panel is going to be, let's see, Europe and Asia, an insight into co-production. So may I invite our moderator, Chan Jin Kai. Was it? Oh, no, sorry. Totally not prepared for this. Yeah. Okay. Christophe Buncher, Chan Jin Kai, Valerie Bournonville, Bianca Balbuena, and Jonas Wiedemann. Thank you very much.
So good morning, everyone. An insight into co-production between Europe and Asia. So that's quite challenging because, first of all, that's not the two regions that co-produce the most between themselves, naturally. But there are co-production existing. You just made one, and most of people in this panel did. Co-production is usually about co-financing, and there's two ways of working, what we've been experiencing every year during these workshops, this program, Taizat Bain, that is finishing today for this edition, for this last edition. And so, in Europe, we noticed that there's a very structured financing with institution money, subsidies, be they national or regional. And then you have some market money, like, of course, the investment of TV and minimum guarantees from the distributors, and also some private money, private investment money. So what maybe I will ask to the first member of this panel, Jonas, who is a German co-producer, is that as in Germany, for example, they have more regional film fund, we could say, or richer regional film funds than other countries in Europe. I think we can say so. So you have plenty way to apply to different kind of financing, also kind of different financing. So Could you just tell us, just to give us an idea on how you start? In which one do you apply first? Do you go first to see a distributor after you package your project, or a TV channel, or you start with some private money and then go to your national film fund? How do you do? Give us your recipe.
Okay, thank you. It's very nice to see you all here. I think, well, in general to say, but probably that's not only for Germany, it's like you never have a second chance to make a first impression, and I think that is always something you have to consider also for your own passion and project, what you have there. So, before you go somewhere, you should check what kind of packaging you have there, either way. But then, of course, if we take, for example, Germany, you have so many options that in your financing plan you can put A to D or A to E, whatever possibilities, depending what your possible German co-producer would think would be best to go first for. Could be a combination out of, for example, if you apply for the list, well, Cinema Fund, which is connected to the Berlin Film Festival, Berlinale, for certain countries applicable, or then combine that with, and that is a very German thing here, for Europe, a regional fund. We do have, even though Germany is rather small as a country, we have a lot of regions, and all of them has different regional funds. Though they all have also kind of different things you have to bring to them, and often that means shooting or something, or if you want to have a smaller sum or amount, it can be also something it brings to your country as a financing. But in general, you should find with your German co-producer then a way how you can package and sell this project to that kind of fund. I mean,
because in Germany, these regional funding are said to be richer than the state funding. Is that true?
We do have state funding, but that's not so interesting for co-production. It's not so much money. I agree. The regions have a lot of money, and they can go totally out of the German content. It can be a project from any part of the world. I totally agree. But then, if it's a regional fund, you need a German co-producer to package with from the beginning.
And a good thing is that this regional funding, so you start generally, it means that you start generally your financing with regional funding, right?
Yes, definitely.
Because, yeah.
No, I would definitely say probably for the whole European art house system, but especially for Germany, the first step, because that is also having the longest terms and meaning of decision, and then closing the contracts and really getting money and going into shooting, the state and regional funding, and then afterwards, maybe for the last third of the budget, you would implement kind of investors or banks or whatever.
And I will say it starts also with regional funding, because also, am I wrong to say that, and is it something that you can access for, you could access for an Asian film project, for example, that you have money at a development stage, like for development, can you get some money from your regional funding for development and from your state funding too?
Well, I would say you can get that development money from certain funds. If we are talking about the World Cinema Fund, or in other European countries about Hubert Ball's fund, or well, there are like a lot of different ways, also markets to or have grants for it. But for regional funds in Germany, you would already need to show some investment on the original country. It doesn't have to be like the last part to be cleared in Germany, but at least something to show that Germany is not coming in first, I think, as the region.
Okay, because I see that Bianca is very interested by this discussion, because if she can come to you with her next project while she's in script development for to get this is very because the development is in the kind of the development of a film project is the most risky part, of course. It can last long. So could she come to you to support her for development
money?
Say yes.
I do say yes.
But the co-production funds mostly give production funding.
Yes.
And then you have Hubert Ball's fund and the smaller development funds.
Yeah, and especially just to go forward, most of the European countries need to close the budget and not relying on post-production funds, which are like then having not a closed financing when the production starts. But let me get here for development. Yes, come to me as a co-producer because I think that is actually something what I would think a European co-producer can start with is saying, okay, yeah, we believe you somewhere. I meet you on, let's say, Cinemart or wherever in Rotterdam, for example, in January or in another market in Europe. And then there's a great project. And then why not asking the co-producer for a little bit of money? Because he should show also, from my point of view, as a European co-producer, show some like real interest, not only going there and saying easy money, maybe going for a World Cinema Fund as an example, shipping then maybe production money to your project and getting my producer's fee, but also really like believing in the story. Depending, of course, if you're coming and asking for 100,000 euros of co-production, like development, that's not possible. But in kind of funding.
So it should still be own investment of a co-producer rather than you will not apply to regional funding for the next Bianca's project.
For development, I think it would be hard, no? It's mostly production, yeah.
Yeah, funding will be mostly hard, but I would still, again, challenge the co-producer to push him a little bit because there are so many interesting funds in Europe to apply for a Dutch, French, whatever, German co-producer. Why not challenge them a little bit in the beginning?
So a good starting point to finance your project in Europe seems to be the subsidies, be they regional or national. So Bianca, you, how do you start for the financing of your project?
With the Asia financing landscape would be, you start with, well, for me at least, we start with public grants. You have the development grants from Asian Cinema Fund, Hubert Ball's Fund, World Cinema Fund, that when you apply, you don't need a co-producer. You can do it yourself. And then you also can go to film labs and film project markets and film workshops. And then the prize money that you get, you can also use it for development. So that's the first step, that's free money. And then the next step would be co-production grants. So when you get to this project markets, you meet your co-producers, you meet your collaborators, and they can help you get funds from their countries that would need them to apply and not you. So you have CNC, you have SOR Fund, and you know better. And then the third one, if I've exhausted all of this public free money, you can go to content right now because they're very actively looking for content. You can go to content providers and distribution companies who are now doing production. So they're here in ATF. You have HBO Asia, you have Catch Play, you have Astro, Netflix. And then the next one would be private investment. And I think Jin Kai can talk more about private investment. So that's basically how we raise financing in Asia. And then maybe for more interesting audience-driven projects, you can even go crowdfunding, which I haven't tried myself.
Okay, thank you. So regarding private investment, which Jinkai, can you tell us a bit more how you run several funds, and what are the kind of how do you look? What kind of project you look for, and how you regard, let's say, content out of Asia, like European content and co-production in general, when as a private investors and.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I run a Silver Media Fund, and that was the first private film fund that was set up in Southeast Asia. And but the whole Southeast Asian media financing landscape has changed very rapidly just over the last 3 to 4 years, right? So before that, I was the only private film fund. Now there's like quite a few, and I'm sitting on the board of 4 others, and there are others which I don't sit on the board of. And that's because people are starting to see that it is an industry that is growing really fast because of our big audience, 640 million people here, and also because the demand for content here is growing higher. Now, so of course, all the different funds, even some of the others that I sit on, they have got different things that they look out for. But one general trend among all the different funds is this. Number one, we know there's still a lot more projects looking for money than money looking for projects. So sometimes what we have is we always have producers coming up to us and thinking, I'm the best project in the whole world. No, there are a lot of projects, and there's very little money, even with so many more field funds being set up, right? So I think for producers, it's taking a humble look at where your projects are and understanding the funds that you talk to, right? There are funds which are special interest funds. So for example, one of the funds which I advise, they are very into positive value content, right? So if you are a horror movie that's full of gore and you go approach them, it's like, okay, you've not done your research on the funds, right? But then all the different funds in the end are looking for commercial returns, right? Because this is an investment fund. If you go, because unlike government grants and subsidies, which probably some of you may be more familiar to, when you approach a private film fund, you can talk about your art, you can talk about how creative you are, but in the end, they need to know the budgets, they need to know the sales projections, they need to know what's the investment structure like, they need to know how they can recover the money after that, because they are investors, right? They won't do it just to support your art, they do it because they need to make money. Because sometimes, a lot of times, these funds represent other people's money. So that's what we really need to understand.
So, and how do you, so each case is different, of course, but how do you regard some project with where there's already co-producers on board? Do you, are you reassured when you see, when a project is proposed to you with some other private equity funds on board, or on the contrary, do you appreciate when there's I don't know, foreign European co-producers who bring soft money, which in a way make a higher production value, reducing the risk for everyone, because usually those subsidies they are soft money, they are not hard money. So
I think that's a very good question, because now, if you think about how investors think, right? Investors always want to mitigate their risk, right? So let's say if it's a $10 million project and their risk amount is 2-3 million, of course that's an advantage to them. But how do you make up the other, let's say 7-8 million, right? If you put it together through some soft monies, you put it together through some pre-sales, or you put it together through some sponsorships or some other investors, then that's always something that's attractive, right? A lot of times for investors, it is not the investment quantum that scares them. It's who else is already on board. And even among investors, okay, especially those that are not as experienced, there is a herd mentality. If there's someone else who's in it, then I want to be on board, right? Because everyone is always scared of being the first person to put the right money. To put the money in, right? So having some other monies, whether it's in incentives or in grants or in sales and all that, always does help persuade the investors.
yes,
May I have a question to that one? Because I totally agree, but then just saying there's so many opportunities in Europe from different countries to maybe get in some soft money, sometimes or often it implies a co-producer from that country, which then means you probably take away their territory in the recoupment to that co-producer? So in which kind does it limit the investors? Would you rather, are there like key territories you would rather not give away, even if there might be soft money coming from? Or instead of rather go for, let's say 5 to 6 co-producers from you, like take it all, and not having then the recoupment opportunity?
Yeah, well, so it really depends on how the deal is structured, right? So there are people who, different co-producers come in and they split across the whole world, including sharing each other's territory, right? And of course, there are sometimes we say, okay, you take your territory, I take my territory. Now, for example, Singapore will never want to do that. We are 5 million people. So it just doesn't make sense. But then, of course, if we can negotiate in a way that's fair for everyone, I think investors are willing to bite, right? So for example, okay, well, you've got 50 million people in your country, I'm 5 million, but let me also take a few other countries to match up.
Like China.
Yeah, with China. but I think in the end, if it's always a way that's equitable, whether by sharing in each other's territory or building the territories in a way that we can make it equitable, I think people will always be open to listen.
Maybe to add to that, a lot of, at least for example in Germany, we have a lot of funding, which is state funding, but then it's mostly a loan which is recoupable only in the event that you recoup something. Mm-hmm. So it's
soft money.
Yes. Mm. But in the recoupment plan, they sometimes try to challenge the investor. Yep. And if I say the investor comes probably in later on than the soft money, you should always be aware not giving away to the European state funding the good places in the recoupment plan, because it's recoupable, but not, I mean, more softly than an investor. Yes. So it's kind of also there you have to start early, even the investors coming in later in negotiating that.
Because you mean that it's you still can negotiate with the regional and national institution about their recoupment.
Everything is negotiable.
That's good to know. So it seems that in Europe there's a lot of opportunity for subsidies, and we used to say that there was not so much opportunity for private investment for the film. But we have the example of Belgium for a few years now, with where finally we could call it private investment, even though it's a kind of regulated by the state, which is all the system of the tax rebate. Can you? So it always seems very complicated, but it's not that complicated. Can you tell us simply, dear Valérie, how it does work?
So. In fact, the tax shelter exists in Belgium for 10 years. It was put in place by the Ministry of Finance, so it's regulated. And we have a former version. The new version of the tax shelter is, yes, really simple. We can get you 42% of your expenses in Belgium. So it looks simple, but the expenses are really regulated. It must be expenses directly related to production things. So we analyze, when we receive a project from abroad, we first analyze the probability of the expenses the co-producer can make in Belgium, and we try to maximize the amount of the tax shelter that we can get. So it's easy, but it's really controlled. So we have to make the real expenses in Belgium. We have to make it in a certain period. We have 18 months to do the expenses. That's why we can apply to the tax shelter when the financement is really advanced. Just like it has to be 80% in place, tax shelter included. So the investors takes risk, so they want to be sure that the film is going to be shot and the expenses can be made in the 18 months when we sign the convention with the partners. So and after it's really regulated because it's controlled by the Ministry of Finance. They come at the office, they take all the costs and they ask questions about every line. So it's, but we are used to manage that. So all Belgian producers are really used to, analyze all the things and work with the co-producer. Not to say you have to spend 1 million and yes, you say, yeah, if you spend that, you have more money. If you spend these things, you have more money. So we are used to analyze that. But it's like private investors, but it's controlled by the Ministry of Finance.
Is flights and hotel accommodation part of the expenses?
No.
And then you get the money before production or after all the receipts have been checked?
No, you receive the money directly. But the main rules is you have the expenses has to be create taxes in Belgium. So, for example, certain company for the flight tickets, if it's a Belgian company who pays taxes in Belgium, it counts. But if it's mid-French, mid-Belgian, it doesn't count. So it's really complicated, but we managed to do all the things. But yeah.
Post-production?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because that's what I wanted to ask. Because most of the European funds we were talking about are selective in a way, but here it's automatic. Am I right?
It's not automatic for all the producers. It's automatic for the producer who are linked directly to a company who is in charge with some investors. That's some companies in Belgium are directly linked, so we have a sort of amount per year automatic.
To invest?
To invest. And very often they have much money than possibility of film. So they have we have a lack of projects in Belgium. There is too much money, not enough projects.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it seems incredible for such a little country, but I think the system is...
work together.
Yeah.
We'll change that today, huh?
Excuse me?
We'll change that today, all going to Belgium.
Because so you were saying production expenses in Belgium, but so if I'm an Asian producer with an Asian content project, obviously, as Bianca was just saying, the expenses I will be able to make in Belgium might be only the post-production expenses. But does that mean that all producers here in this room from Asia could dream of having a 42% funding for their post-production by co-producing with Belgium and give it away, this market, to the Belgium co-producers?
For the moment, the only Asian country that can imagine to have money in Belgium is China, because it's the only country we have a treaty with. So we managed to do things, because there is another rules for the tax shelter. You have to make a certain amount of Belgian expenses, but you have to make a certain amount of European expenses. And it has to be very precise. So it's difficult if just it's a main project, an Asian project, to come in Belgium and to say, okay, it's okay for the Belgian expenses, but we don't have the European expenses. So, for example, not an Asian country, but we used to co-produce with Canada.
Yes.
And when we have a Canadian-Belgium co-production, It works if, for example, the Canadian shoots a part of the film in Czechia, and so it counts for like European things. And we can manage to find tax shelter, but otherwise it doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay. So, co-production, yeah.
Maybe I can add to that. I think it's in Europe often, in a lot of countries, including Germany, a point, depending on how much financing you expect, at a certain level you have to implement that there should be maybe a treaty in place or something that you can implement the film as from the Asian country and being also of the nationality of the co-production country in Europe. So often or sometimes there is a treaty and then it's possible, but then there has to be also a certain amount coming from that country as financing. Let's call it 20% often in treaties or something. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for much smaller amounts, then it can be, I mean, it's not necessary at all. Then it's just more like a cultural support kind of, and your co-producer can bring most of the money to be spent in the country where you're shooting or producing.
Yeah, so just about it. So in the audience today, maybe not everyone is familiar with what you said. What we call treaty. It's a treaty between two or several countries that that enable the producers of those countries under the respect of certain rules to get the treatment for co-production as a national film in each country. Which means, what is the use of treaty? Indeed, it's to tap on soft money because each country protects the soft money. Usually, it's aimed to promote the national culture or regional culture. And they protect it under certain rules to access it. And when they sometimes, for example, make a treaty between France and Germany, it allows a German film to be treated as a French film in France and to access this soft money.
Which then in Europe adds up to be very important because that gives you also the possibility to get soft money for the distribution because of the national film, even though maybe it's in German language playing in France.
But it doesn't mean that if there's no such a bilateral treaty that you cannot co-produce between the country. And in Asia, there's a few countries who have a bilateral treaty, and China has one with Belgium, with France, with Italy. I don't know about Singapore, but I think that in a way, for example, you just, let's say, co-produce a film with China. You will tell us more at the Taizadbein group session this afternoon. But you didn't have the film is not Chinese. You didn't use the treaty. You co-produce with China without using the treaty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why didn't you use the treaty? Because you didn't need.
Because first of all, because the film doesn't pass the censorship. We have only equity money. We have not 10% because the equity money is not 10% of the budget, so we don't have to recognize the film like a Chinese film. We don't need to, because in fact we had a reimage and the Chinese part is included in the European one. It's not a country apart, because Eurimage asks us to do that.
So Eurimage is a European film fund for co-production.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may say something about the issue with treaties is, of course, treaties are meant to help two countries to work more closely together. But I think sometimes, or rather a lot of times, it becomes so hard because then you got to tick boxes on one side and tick a lot of boxes on the other side. And in the end, you can never get something done. So a lot of the co-productions that I've done, because for me, we've got private funds on this side, and we feel, so we don't want to tick the boxes on the Singapore side, then let me just work with the soft monies on the other side. And we find it happens faster. We've tried tapping on money from Singapore side and the other side. In the end, it always, after a year, 2 years it fails, and we thought, well, private money moves faster if we just use soft money on one side.
So oh, you want to say?
I think the big complication between co-production with Europe and Asia is Europe financing comes from soft money. So let's say Jonas and I co-produce a film together. 50% goes to Jonas, 50% goes to me, and Jonas will raise the money without a peso from his pocket, but still keeps 50%. And I have to raise money as an Asian producer via private investment, so I end up selling my shares. And I think that's always the clash between the co-production between Europe and Asia, which brings me to another aspect of co-production. And we're not just here to co-produce because of financing. We're also here because we need a collaborator from Europe who knows the market in Europe, and we know the market in Asia. So it's more of a creative collaboration and, packaging the film to a global market. And usually the Europeans have connections to the sales agents, and they know the market more and the distribution more. So, yeah. Am I making sense?
Totally, but
Or is it just money?
it's all about money, of course. No, I would totally agree. But then I think 2 days ago we talked about that, and I think still it doesn't make sense in a negotiation, even though I'm on the wrong side here. If I'm bringing in only soft money and transferring it to an Atos project to you, in this case, and I'm keeping 50%, and you have to give away from your 50% all that to, like, part of it to an investor. So I think...
Yeah, so everything should be put in a deal memo.
Negotiate it. Really, I mean, where's my argument? I don't have one. So it's kind of...
And I think when you enter a co-production, let's say for Southeast Asian project, the budget is only usually 200,000 US or less. But if you get into a co-production, you have to be aware that you have to spend some money in Europe, and that will inflate your budget.
Yeah.
So you have, yes. I have so many things to say, but we only have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, but again, even though it's nice that I bring in soft money in this case, you bring the content, right? So I can bring in the funds, which I'm not responsible for. I can make something happen. I can maybe have a contact to somebody, but you have the content, and that's all about. So it's negotiation.
So since it's not all about money, and since you mentioned the timing, let's talk about the timing and about the collaboration between the co-producer beyond the money, because the earlier we start to co-produce, the more collaboration we can have on the creative aspect, and maybe we can dream of making a more culturally rich content with others' culture influence. So I will ask the four of you when it's a good moment to come to you with a project to co-produce. What do you look for? Do you expect to have something well advanced, or do you prefer to have someone at a project and at an early stage? And about timing, last thing is that. Because we were talking about the timing, but timing is important in the co-production too, and usually we noticed huge differences between the time before shooting in Asia and in Europe, which can be problematic sometimes. So,
sure.
I mean, like Jonas said, I think it depends on the project, because we can be involved really early on a pitch sometimes, and we follow all the things and we analyze day after day how it works, and we can make proposition. Even, for example, for the country that Belgium has not treaty, we can propose another partner, European partner, to say, it can be good if you see this person of this person. So we managed to work really early on the project because we want to bring artistic value or knowledge or things, propose some technical crew, just adapt it to the project and work, location scootings if the shooting can be in Belgium or things like that. We work really early. It's our development money because we don't count it. We work and okay, if it works, it works. If it don't work, we say, okay, guys, it will be great to work together, but it's not possible. So it's the possibility we give to the co-producer is our expertise. So it's good when it's early, I think.
I would agree, and I think it's two things about the timing. One thing is you go to a market, there's a great project from a country from, let's say, Southeast Asia.
Philippines, for example.
From Philippines.
Or Singapore.
Go for it. And then I'm like really like as a producer, I'm totally hooked and I'm totally passionate. You want to go for it. Well, that's not the financing part. That is the passion of a producer. So you want to go in, go for it. That's one part, and then you put up in development and you go further. And then me, as a German, I'm challenging as well the problem, as I said before. Why should a German funding body, institution, whatever, finance a project which is maybe not yet financed by the country itself? Mm-hmm. So there need to be something from the original country in order to get a co-producer, get any money, even if we are talking about soft money. Though, on the other hand, yes, we need to start early in Europe because getting soft money and getting all this paperwork and all these different, maybe 3-4 different kind of funding bodies together takes a lot of time. If an investor, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, coming in, he expects like 6 months later shooting and 1.5 years later recoupment, something like that. That will never happen with soft money. So it's something in between, right? First money from the country, then soft money from Europe, and then the investor from Asia, something like that?
Yeah, yeah, so as a fund, right, again, different funds function differently. I'm first a producer, then a financier, right? So for my fund, we want to be creatively involved with you early, but commit the money late, right? Why is that so? Okay, because the fact is this, we are firstly producers. We want to work with you on the creative process. We want to work with you on the script. We want to work with you on the casting and all of that. And because that affects how the fund performs as well, right? So we want to be involved creatively early. But for commitment of funds, there's always an ROI ticking, right? If we put the money in because we're interested and it takes another 2 years to develop, our investors are going to be screaming at us, right? So when you approach funds, approach them early with the concept and develop with them, and then when the time is ripe, they will put in the money. Yeah.
So, sorry, let's try to make that the four of us very pragmatic.
Yes.
So Christophe is coming with a project on a whatever. You have a project, then how should we proceed? There's coming up a market. You go there and present it. Somebody
maybe apply for development funds because you need you need these funds to get into the markets also. You need, sometimes not all project markets fly you and your producer.
How do you choose your project market? Which one is fitting for your project?
Well, it depends. If you're done in December, you can apply for, no, you're done like October, you can apply for Berlinale Project Market, you can apply for Cinemart, you can apply for Hong Kong Asian Financing Forum. If I'm an Asian producer, I want to look for European co-producers, then I go to Cinemart and Berlinale co-production. And if you're looking for the Chinese partners or the Taiwanese partners, then you go to the Hong Kong Asian Financing Forum.
Well, now, I have this great project. How do I actually judge where to go first and in which status I should go to a market in order that a European co-producer, for example, jumps on board? Or can I actually apply twice or 3 times on different markets? Does it value my project more, or does it like actually it's getting less interesting?
I think before project market, sorry, I have to say that you need to go to film labs first. I think it's development grant and film labs all together for a year maybe. You have Taizet Bind, you have Jerusalem Film Lab, Torino Film Lab, and then when your material is kind of ready to be pitched, then you go to the project markets and the co-production markets. Cinemart requires a market premiere, so maybe you can prioritize that first.
If I just may interrupt, just Jinkai, I wanted to ask you with your investment fund, not your producer's hat, but your investor's hat, do you happen to invest in development? Because it's true that we say the later we are financially involved, the less risky it is. So for an investor, it makes sense. On the other hand, usually when you invest in a very early stage on IP or at a development stage, you can take a huge share because you take a lot of risk with a little amount. Because proportionally you take a huge risk, but you just invest, I don't know.
Yeah. This is what we've been trying to develop as a fund as well, a portion for development. But that is hard so far to convince investors because, as I was saying about Asia, film financing is still quite new to them. And so we are pushing new grounds with the investors all the time. We do hope that there will be a development fund one day, but right now it seems like it's some governments that have it. Private development funds are hard to find right now.
Okay.
I have just to add something. For the tax shelter in Belgium, there is no recoupment.
There is?
No recoupment.
Wow. I hope you brought a lot of name cards with you. So there's a little bit more than 1 minute left. I don't know if there are any questions in the audience. Yes, just in front of me.
I just ask, my name is John Leong, come from Han Picture. I just want to know, any of you guys right now is working any interesting project you want to mention to people?
Sorry.
Interesting project, co-production project, any interest co-production project.
In which project?
No, what I'm just saying is you're a guy or producer. You produce anything, co-produce anything right now is any interest to the audience.
Yeah, I think you do.
If we have project fund.
Do you have, at the moment, projects?
Do we have projects right now that we are working on that wants to co-produce?
But a co-production project. Maybe.
With Asia.
Actually, there's a Southeast Asian Film Financing Forum project market that's happening now. Maybe around 10 projects that are pitching, and then there's Taizet Bind, Yave Taizet Bind, Producers Workshop also, which is another 10 projects. So basically, there's 20 good projects looking for financing and co-producers.
25. Yeah. So over here, there's like at least 25 projects, and I think Bianca has a few. I have a few. All of us, there's a lot of projects. Me, yeah.
Of course.
I do have one all the time. Yeah, I think we can take that off the off the platform. We can talk privately.
And time's up. Is there just any last question? If we can take some more time? No? Oh, yes, one here.
Hi everyone. Actually, I'm quite interested in co-production, and we're doing some co-production as well. So basically, my question will focus on, in European countries we have tax credit. Once you work with your co-producer, whether you will share those kind of thing with them.
I don't understand the question.
So how do you share the
tax credit?
Yeah,
means
the tax credit,
most of the time you will
credit.
use that for the sales, for the revenue, right? And if what?
No, tax credit
Tax
really,
credit is
it's like
production.
really money. It's like an investment. It's not like a reduction of the cost or whatsoever. It's really like a funding. That's money you will receive. You make some expense, and then you will receive the states. I don't know. Let's take the Belgium example. You will spend 100 euros. And you will receive, like a funding, you will receive money on your account, 42
42, and it's the in case of the Belgium, it's the Belgian producer who is receiving the money and spending the money on the country, because it's expenses that has to be done.
And maybe the question is,
but it's not shared. It's not.
Time is up. But maybe the question.
Yeah, my question is,
part
once
of the
you
production
finish,
money, but it's part of the European producer.
But the question was a bit, how do you share it? But you
It's a
share it.
production, not sales, right? Tax shelter and tax rebate is a production
Not a
money, not
recoupment.
sales. Yeah.
It's just to manufacture the film.
Part of
basically.
the production financing, but it's by legislation, it's part of the European producer. That one is not to share. If it's not, it's in Belgium, in Germany, we have a different one, but it's always on the part of the European producer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I have the same understanding, but my co-producer doesn't have, so I want to clarify just. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, my dear panelists, and see you later.